Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're out here in North Cove in North Carolina. Today we're going to be talking about forehands, which is my favorite subject. We're going to be covering things like grip, timing, power, footwork. It's going to be a really good one. Let's get into it. So I do the normal 2-finger grip. It's what's been most comfortable to me. I did dabble a little bit in the 1 finger. I don't quite know how to hold it anymore, but when I line up my fingers, I put my middle finger in the rim, pointer finger on top, and I push it really deep into my hand. Like you can see how like the meat of my thumb / top of my hand is pushing into the disc. Whenever it's sitting in your hand, you want to kind of put it right before this joint, and there's that little seam for like the edge of the rim, and you're going to press down with your thumb. You do need to like physically press down, because during the motion, if you start letting that thumb get relaxed, that nose angle is going to start changing. All right, so your form could be just fine, but you're just not putting enough pressure into that hand. Like it should be very, very stable. Like no one should be able to pull it out. So if I'm throwing that way, I start with my left foot back and my right foot forward. This is just like weight shift for me. So when I'm getting ready to like use my feet, I shift my weight to my right leg, and I even take this little step, but then I kind of load my weight into my quad, and then I shuffle the weight. And so like during that shuffle, you're trying to maintain balance here, right? So some common things that you might find when you're working on this is that you're like, the weight's getting offset back here, like your shoulders are over your right foot instead of staying right over that quad. You want to keep the weight in your quad. That way, when you're taking that stride and you're about to plant, you can drive that weight out of your quad into the next heel. So, because you can see as I'm pushing my right heel down, my left one goes down. So this is like a drill you want to do to like practice your weight shift. So you can like shuffle, balance, push, right? And so that's that move that's going to kind of start generating that hip power. When you're working on your shuffles, in reality, when you put you don't quite put your toe down and drive your heels. That's purely just to get you to understand what weight shift feels like. If you've watched like baseball pitchers or even the most elite forehand throwers, they all, when they take their last step, they're here, drive, right? Like we actually land with our heel down on our knees a little bit, and then we push and snap. So that should come naturally to you as you start, practicing your forehands and stuff. This is just purely figuring out timing. Once you get comfortable learning how to transfer your weight, let it start coming into your hips. So you can take a single step, pop, right? So you drive, pop your hip, right? Shuffle, pop, right? You'll feel that lag, pop. Once you're comfortable with that move, start adding in your hands. So if you were teaching like a child to play baseball, we talk about scarecrow. So once you start shuffling your feet, you want your hands to break, right? And so you kind of want to trace that move during your shuffles. So we shuffle, break. It's like by the time your front foot's landing, your shoulders are still square to where you're facing originally, and your hands are broken and your front shoulder's closed. Sometimes when people tend to throw nose up, during that shuffle, the left arm starts to open up, so they'll kind of be like here, pop, right? And you'll see the shoulders lean over and your arm's gonna start to dip. And you'll start getting that dragging move, and you'll start injuring your muscles back here because it can't keep up. So the way I think about it, when I start driving into my front leg, I want to keep that elbow facing your target, right? So you keep your like shoulders shut, creating that torque and tension in your core. Then you fire that move. Once you start using your hips, we're going to talk about like where we release our snap out front. So once we get into this position and we're driving and the hips are pulling the arm through, you start pushing off that back leg and you reach out front and snap. So like if you've ever watched like videos of Ricky Wysocki, his release is like way out here. Like he's balanced on his front leg, the back foot's up, and he's out here. And his hand is very there, right? No matter what, your arm will finish like this. It's just a natural rotation. It's just when it finishes. So you want to feel out front, out front, out front, release, disc sleeves, you finish, right? And you could finish like out front, you could finish down here, as long as it doesn't translate into the rolling of your wrist. A drill that I did to help myself work on throwing nose down and kind of figuring out my snap timing was I started with my front foot, my front toe down and my heel up, and I would just snap into the ground. Like this kind of gave me that sense of like hip pop, right? Hip pop, as I'm like learning my snap in my forehand. So I would start with that drill, touch, pop, step, touch, pop, and then do the shuffle, pop, right? And you just continue to throw it like straight into the ground. Then start to kind of level it back out, and it should help correct, or at least give you the sense of feeling what throwing like nose down and low feels like. But just to remember, as you're working and practicing, make sure you're staying patient and do things at like 60, 50, 70%. Like you don't want to go like 90 to 100 because you are working on something, and you don't want to neglect things and you start injuring yourself. So 60, 70% to begin with. So when you're throwing different angles for forehands, it's a lot like backhand. You want to make sure you're setting yourself up like this is hyzer, and then you're kind of moving yourself up through here. So when I'm throwing my hyzer angles, I use my D2 Pros just because I know that they're flippy enough to get that pop to that turn, and they will still come back. So when I set myself up, it's shuffle here, right? And I'm almost tracing that line as I do my shuffle. It's just kind of that feel versus feel, and it helps me keep track of where my arm's going, because sometimes when I throw my hyzers, I'll forget to trace, and I'll end up dropping my hand way down here, and then I sky my hyzers. Like at that point, there is no nose down, right? You couldn't put your nose down enough when you look like this as you're throwing. So I try to think as I'm coming through here, like staying on that line, snap out front. Like you're really gonna have to force yourself to snap out front on hyzers, because we tend to release early, and that's when they just saw off right. So it's just being very diligent about like where your release point is. Hear that? So when I'm trying to throw my flat to any releases, I like to choose something stable like my Falcor. This is the most natural angle to me. It's from my softball background, but like we talked about a second ago, making sure our hip angle is a little higher. So when we break here, make sure we hit our hip point flat, and then make sure your thumb pressure stays down as you snap through that disc. Mistakes that I make when I am throwing my annies is I like roll my thumb too early, and so they'll just go into the ground. Like, I mean, it's straight annie into the ground. So you do have to make sure on all of these you are diligently thinking about taking your thumb and releasing it out front, right? And so this is kind of like how you want to adjust your angles, like with your body, the lean and stuff like that. So when I'm on the tee box and I'm preparing for an angle, like you'll see me like be way out here, right? I'm thinking about take my finger to the exact point of where I need my release to happen, and then I just kind of imagine that when I actually go. You can practice that in a field. You know, you can find a tree and you're thinking, I'm trying to hit that tree. Try to keep your head and chin down. This will cause up nose release as well. Head and chin down, reach to your target. Like you will be finishing like stiff against your front leg, chest out front. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I can always make more videos on these questions. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all on the next one.